Hello, hello, everyone. It's me, Arden Lee. It's pretty late over here where I am right now, but I felt inspired to make a video anyway. Um, Not least in part because I have a lovely friend staying with me this next week, so I'm trying to make as many videos as possible before she arrives so that I don't have work to do when she gets here. But even more so, especially because I had a really lovely, deep conversation with a man tonight who asked me this really wonderful question that I was so grateful he asked me. And it was not one that I had heard before, specifically, and therefore not one that I had really consciously considered, but I found that I had an answer for it almost immediately. And his question was essentially, he said to me, I have a daughter. We were talking a lot about trauma. I was telling him about the work that I do. So we were talking a lot about trauma and about how patterns set in. And he said to me, after I had shared with him a lot of my own personal trauma, he asked me, he said, I have a daughter, and what can I do as a father to make sure that my daughter doesn't end up tolerating abuse from men? And of course, there's never a perfect answer to that question because, of course, abuse can happen to anyone. But as we know, for those of you who have followed some of my work around looking at the adverse childhood experiences test and the way that a number of difficulties and traumas that we experience or are exposed to during our childhood raises our risk for abuse, for sexual assault, for addiction, for alcoholism, for a whole host of other issues in our adult lives. So there is some correlation, and so I want to share with you the answer that I felt inspired in that moment to give him. And of course, before I get into that, as always, I'm going to give you my spiel. My spiel is, if you're not yet familiar with me and my work, my name is Arden Lee, and I am the creator of the Repatterning Project. That is an 8-week course where we examine our patterns, we look at our past traumas, our histories, all the things that caused us to form the beliefs that we have today, and to examine whether those beliefs are still serving us, or if we want to hack them to get in there and start rewiring and changing our relationship to our history, changing the way that we view things, changing the way that those beliefs become stored in our bodies, so that even if we can't, oh hi Virgil, even if we can't, that was a lovely jump you just made, even if we can't change our past, we can change our relationship to it, and we can also hopefully change our future going forward. If you want to learn about that, in the description box there is a link to a free PDF guide about the Repatterning Project, and you can download it and learn more about what it is that we do. There's also a link in the description box to the Repatterning Parlor, which is the Facebook group that I moderate. So go ahead and join that if you want to meet a whole bunch of like-minded individuals who are also on their own paths to happiness and success and personal growth. And as always, of course, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel and or like my page, depending on what platform you are viewing this video on, and come say hi. I would love to hear from you. All right, so there I am tonight, and I met this man who is asking me about the work that I do, and I'm describing it, and he said, what can I do to make sure that my daughter doesn't end up in situations where she's tolerating a whole bunch of crap from abusive men in her relationships? And the first thing that came to mind, which I told him, was really value her ideas. Really always ask for what she's thinking, ask for her opinions on things, ask for her takes on things, and don't do it for the sake of immediately disagreeing with her. In fact, if you can, sure, it's always okay to disagree with our loved ones in a kind and gentle manner, but really the purpose of it, I would love for your response to be something like, that's so interesting. Thank you for helping me understand you a little bit better. Or I really value your opinion on XYZ. And I said that can be anything from watching the news together and saying, well, what's your opinion on this? Or it can be something as simple as, where does the family want to go for dinner tonight? Because, as author Matt Haig says, childhood is the chorus that keeps repeating. And the ways that we are treated in our childhood and in our adolescence become what is familiar to us. And of course, there is always a chance that you can treat your daughter, or your child, whoever you may be. You can treat your child amazingly well. You can do your absolute very best as a parent, and they can still be, abused or gaslighted into a relationship because, they might not know any better. But the thing that you can really anchor in during their childhood is you can anchor in that familiarity. You can anchor in that thing that feels familiar, that feels comfortable. And if you don't want your daughter, specifically, in this conversation, this man also brought up specifically not wanting her objectified, or treated as disposable, or you get what I'm saying. And so immediately I said, well, if you don't want her to be abused, to be objectified, I was thinking about how a lot of relationships with narcissists typically go. And the person who is going to really value you in a relationship, the person who's really going to cherish you as a partner, is always going to want to know what your truth is. They're always going to want to know your thoughts, your ideas, your opinions. They're going to really value that, because they're going to view that moment of being able to hear you and understand you as a moment of actually getting closer to you, as a moment of creating emotional intimacy. And the person who is a narcissist or an abuser, or someone who is just objectifying you or using you for the way that you make them feel, or the way that that you lend status to them, or that you whatever it is, they're really not interested in the way that you feel on the inside. They're interested in the way that you make them feel and the way that you act around them. And what they want from you is they want you to comply. They want you to not rock the boat. They want you to do things in such a way that that is convenient for them. They're placing their own feelings and their experience, and even their experience of you, way above your experience of them, or their relationship, or your experience of the world even. When you're in a relationship with someone who is abusive, they act really inconvenienced when you're hurt, right? Or defensive. Inconvenienced or defensive, or or they turn it on you, or whatever, And I remember even way back in my 20s feeling like, I don't understand. I really want to be with someone who cares when I'm hurt. And I understand that it's not that person's responsibility to make me happy, One of my exes at that point in time had certainly gaslighted me into believing that expecting a partner not to hurt me was a slippery slope to my emotionally manipulating them, which I wish that had been a red flag back then, but I was too naive to really recognize it. So his take was that if I got some sort of a say in what was okay and what was not, that I would abuse that power. That if I said, this hurts me, please stop doing it, and he was expected to stop doing it, that I would just use that for whatever, and try to throw my weight around in that capacity. So that was a problem, obviously. So that's really what the answer that was immediately there for me is: if you want your child to learn, that what is familiar, what is known, what is comfortable to them is that they are valued and cherished in relationship, then I think the best thing that you can do is to value their truth and to really use that opportunity for them to tell you their feelings, their ideas, and their opinions in a way that brings you closer to them, in a way that you can really honor. And I think it's, as I said, I think it's really important not to disagree with them right away. Certainly, you know, healthy debates can happen in a family, absolutely. But for the purposes of this specifically, even if you don't agree with them necessarily, to always really thank them for sharing it with you, and to really let them know that regardless of whether you agree with their truth or not, that you value their truth and you respect it as theirs. I think that's what for me was so damaging in my own childhood, because I was raised by an abuser, and when I tried to take that to the court system, I was gaslighted out of that that abuse, my recounting that abuse even mattering. I was told that, you know, it shouldn't be that bad, or if I couldn't handle it, that I was too sensitive. Who says that, right? Like, who says that to a 14-year-old child? And I was sent right back. So for me, I learned that speaking my truth and trying to set boundaries for myself didn't work. And not only did it not work, that it was dangerous for me, that it actually created unsafe conditions. Because, of course, the trauma of trying to go to court to legally emancipate yourself from your father and failing, and then having to go back to your abusive father for another, you know, 3.5 years or so, is that's pretty damaging. So yeah, I really believe, when I felt into the energy of that question, that the way to raise a child who is not set up to immediately enter into relationships that are abusive is to honor their truth and allow them to set their boundaries, and always show that you value their ideas and you value their speaking their minds. You can certainly raise your child to speak their minds in a way that is respectful and kind and loving, but which doesn't sacrifice their truth, which doesn't sacrifice the way that they feel. And if they get into relationships where that is not the standard, the bottom line, hopefully they will recognize that as being strange and unfamiliar, and they will leave that relationship before anything gets out of hand. So thank you for watching, and really appreciate that man who asked that question tonight, because it's a really good question. I'm grateful for the opportunity to make this video about it. So thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful. I'll see you next time.